Hi, today I am just south of a village called Colleston in Aberdeenshire, and my intention is to do a really stealthy little camp down at the bottom of Hackley Bay. Now, it's a bit remote, but there is a lot of dog walking in the path above, and I'll show you where that is. Ooh, spin it round. Over there. So my intention is to go down there and put up a new tent that I've got. I've got a camo tent, and hopefully that'll keep me hidden now. I can already see a dog walker heading down towards the beach. So what I'm going to do is I'll get down to the beach and I'll wait till they've gone, and then I'll maybe set up my tent. But I think I'm probably going to leave the tent as late as I possibly can. And when I get down there, I'll tell you a little bit about the history of the area I'm camping. So off we go. Now these steps, I know they won't look very steep on camera because that's how the whole kind of GoPro thing works, but these are seriously steep, and I am going to be, well, breathing out my arse tomorrow morning coming back up these with this rucksack on, so that's going to be fun. But I'm using gravity this time, and I'm just going to make sure that I don't stumble and tumble all the way at the bottom. So I'll carry on down at the bottom. There we go, that's me at the bottom, and I'll spin it around and show you it from this direction. That was pretty steep, so I'm going to try and make my way round now. Tide's still, I think it's just going out now, but it's still quite high up the beach, so I'm going to try and stay on the dry rocks, and then I'm just going to drop my sack off and wait till this dog walker's gone. So I'll see you over the other side of the beach. This is Hackley Bay, and in the 18th century it was used by smugglers to bring ashore goods to avoid taxation. Now, taxation at the end of the 18th century was becoming a bit of a problem for most people. The government down in England, led by the Hanoverian King George III, had involved Britain in numerous wars, and Britain was effectively bankrupt. The government's solution was to push the taxes up on the people. And this had not gone down very well. Now, the people around here were still Jacobite sympathisers, and they detested King George. They had no intention of paying taxes to him, and they did everything they could to get out of it. It was referred to as free trading, and it was considered a bit of a sport. Now, in the local village of Colleston, which is just up that way, smuggling was a serious organised business, and it was run by two brothers, John and Philip Kennedy. And they had had numerous run-ins with the local excise officer called Anderson, but he'd never managed to catch him, and there was a serious grudge going on between the Kennedys and Anderson. Now, on the 18th of December 1789, a Dutch lugger called the Crooked Mary anchored just north of the village of Colleston and put the signal up that they'd got goods on board that needed to be brought ashore. Now, Philip Kennedy took the signal and he went to the village and he gathered a work party. And once it had got dark, the party and two carts went off to the bay to receive the goods. It was barrels of Holland gin that were coming ashore. Now, unbeknownst to them, the local excise officer, Mr. Anderson, had been tipped off by a Navy cutter who'd been tailing the Crooked Mary up the coast. And Anderson, with two heavies, had set up an ambush on the back road. They sat and waited, and as the work party came back laden with barrels of gin, they leapt out and ambushed them. Anderson fired his pistol, and most of the party ran. But Philip Kennedy stood his ground and wrestled with the two heavies. Now, at this point, Anderson could have arrested him, but he chose to draw his sabre. He was an ex-military man, and with three sharp cuts, Kennedy was left for dead, the top of his head sliced clean off. Now, Kennedy wasn't dead, although Anderson thought he was. And Kennedy crawled for a quarter of a mile to the local kirkyard, where he lay bleeding to death. Now, in the morning, his friends came to look for him, and they found him in the kirkyard. And with his dying breath, he said to them that if they had been as true as he was, the goods would have got through, and he wouldn't be lying there in his own blood. And just shortly after that, he died. And he was buried literally where he fell. This is his gravestone. Now, next to his gravestone is his brother's John's gravestone. Now, John lived to the age of 56. He got married and he carried on smuggling, but he managed to avoid Anderson. Now, what of Anderson, you'd ask? Now, he did actually get accused of murder and was summoned to the High Court in Edinburgh. But the judge thought that he was just doing his job and that he'd used his sword in self-defense, and he was acquitted. He was found not guilty. Now, Anderson, I think, got off lightly, but he never forgave the village, and he prowled around that village till the day he retired, just keeping them all on their toes, because he hadn't forgotten what went on in that village. I hope you found that interesting. I think the sun is going down and I probably better get my tent up. So let's get the tent up. Okay, before I get my tent up, I think I'm actually going to gather some water. Normally I carry all my water in with me, but my bag was pretty heavy and I thought if I could cut down it by 2 kilos I would. And I know there's a water source up here because there's a spring just at the top of the hill and the water comes down. So I'm going to use, where am I? I've got my empty water bottle and I'm going to use a what's it called? A Caden B3. A Caden B3. B3 even. That's a bit of a mouthful, so let's walk along the beach at the top here and we'll go and get some water. Now there's lots of different ways of purifying your water, and I know there are plenty of people that just drink it straight from the stream, and that's fine if that's what you want to do. But there are plenty of things you can catch from water and you don't really know what's upstream of it. Could be something dead in there. Now the Caden B3 is pretty recognised as being one of the better ones for taking out protozoa, bacteria, but it won't take out viruses. It's not an ultra filter, it's a microfilter. Now, if you're really interested in methods of water purification, there's a channel called Gear Skeptic who has done a whole playlist on it, and this guy, my God, he knows his stuff. So I'll link it in the description. It's pretty interesting, but without doubt, the best way to purify your water is to boil it. Well, actually, as he says, pasteurising the water, but I am going to be using this water for my dinner, and it has to be cooked to get the noodles soft enough, boiled, I should say, to get the noodles soft enough. So I am going to filter the water and then I'm going to boil it. So that's what this one's for. This is my cooking water. So I'm going to have to watch where I'm walking because there's a lot of rocks and things here. There's also a lot of detritus that's washed up from the sea. Turn it round like that, because I think on the very, very high tides the water comes to here. Water comes up over where I'm camping, so thankfully I've checked the tides and it'll be fine. So there you go, there's the spring running out the side of the hill, and I'm going to gather it down the bottom. Now it looks a bit manky, but the water's actually really quite clear, and I think the filter will make short work of it. So I'm going to drop down over here, and then we'll go and gather some water. Well, a little bit peaty coloured. There we go. Okay, that's me set up. A new tent. Well, it's a cheap tent. I paid 50 quid for it, so I'm not going to complain too much. Yeah, it's going to take a little bit of modifying, should we say, to get it to pitch a bit tighter. It's a bit baggy at the back, but for what I bought it for, lowland, stealth camping, I think it'll be perfect. No, it's not a mountain tent, it's nowhere near, but I'm never going to be using it for that. But it's spacious, it blends in, and apart from the guy line setup at the front, which I think is a bit silly, it's got a single guy line going across the doorway, so I've kind of jury-rigged a bit of paracord for now, and when I get home I'll put a twin guy line at the door so I can get in and out without to stoop underneath it. But other than that, I think it's okay. It certainly blends in, and obviously I'll show you inside it. Absolutely tons of space. I'm sleeping on a Dutch Army foam mat. I've got a new air mattress thing. I've gone for a thinner one this time because the big thick one I've got, the Trekology one, I fall off the thing. I'm not too keen with it. This one, I'll try it out. If it's any good, I'll tell you about it. And I've got my blow-up Trekology pillars. I've left my swanky Vango one at home today just to cut down on the weight, because I actually bought in with me 5 kilos of wood, because although there are trees around here, I don't want to be cutting them down. It looks like people have been doing that before me, and they ain't going to last very long. So as you can see, somebody's had a fire here already. I bought my little burner box and I'll probably use that, but I may well use the stone circle there, and I'll use the wood that I bought in with me, because yeah, these trees behind me are looking a bit sad. Somebody's had a go at them with an axe by the looks of it, so I'm not going to encourage that. But other than that, I think the site's pretty good. It's an absolutely amazing view. Look at that for a view behind me. I think this is going to be a good camp. So I'm just going to go and have a wander, and I'll come back to you when I'm going to set up for cooking. Well, I'm all settled in now, so I'm going to get myself a brew on, and I don't normally show you my stove very much, but I've got my alcohol burning stove with me, so what I'll do is I'll move the camera and I'll show you my setup and how I cook on an alcohol stove. So an old Trangia kettle, that just stops everything rattling together. And then I have a small bottle of alcohol. I also carry a second one. I have the burner. I have a titanium windshield. And I also have a set of these, which are a bit on the stiff side. I don't need them with the kettle because the kettle sits on that. Oops, get there in a minute. There we go. It looks flimsy, but actually works really well. And I always run with this full. Spill it everywhere. that's my setup. Okay, well I've got to do it, haven't I? I've got to do a stealth check, a la Steve Wallace. So I'm going to go up there, walk up the steep steps on the other side of the bay, and walk round where the fence is, where all the dog walkers walk. So I shall turn the camera off while I puff and pant all the way up the steps, and I'll turn you back on when I get up there. No shit, that's lethal. You would not want to come up or down these steps on a wet day. My God, that's steep. But I'll spin the camera around, and I'm pretty pleased with the camo. That tent blends in beautifully. So I think what we'll do, we'll walk round, go back down the steps, because the sun's going down and I think it's going to be getting dark in about 15 minutes. Well, I thought I'd get my dinner on before it goes completely dark. So obviously tonight I've got spicy noodles again. But tonight I'm having Mr. Noodle, there, try again, Mr. Noodles spicy chicken. Never had that one before, we'll give that a try. And I've got a kimchi one in my bag just in case that's bogging. And obviously, because I need the calories, I've got some pepper armies that I'll slice up in it. And for pudding, for a change, I've got a tin of peaches. And it comes with a ring pull, which is even better. So, tin of peaches, spicy noodles, and a cup of coffee. So, as I'm using an alcohol burner, it'll probably be dark by the time it's boiled, but that's okay. So I'll bring you back when it's all ready. Well, that's the kettle boiling, so I'll make my noodles. I think there's probably enough water left there for a brew, so I've got a tea bag in a cup because Chinese noodles, cup of tea. That's it, noodles are ready. They've stood for the requisite time of sun, and there we go. First impressions, yeah, they look a bit watery, but they were very cheap, so cheap's good. So as ever, a helicopter flying over us, we'll let the helicopter fly over. Yeah, where I'm camped, if ever you wondered why there's always helicopters flying over, is I'm on the flight path between Dice Airport and the North Sea oil rigs, and Dice is the busiest heliport in the world. So we do get quite a lot of helicopters flying over here day and night. It was the same for when I camped at the Kirk at 4V. Anyway, back to the noodles. They look all right. They're cheapies and they probably need beefing up a little bit with some spicy sauce or something, but I'm going to give them a try. And as ever, I'm not going to film it. You don't need to see me slurping down my noodles, and nobody wants to. Apart from that one guy who said he wanted to, and I'm not indulging anybody's noodle fetishes. Not even for you, sir. So, I'll see you when I've had my noodles. Well, that was surprisingly good, and the noodles may have looked a bit wishy-washy, but they were absolutely brilliant, and the spice kind of crept up on you. So, yeah, Mr. Noodles, very good. But the star of the show was tin peaches. I had forgotten how nice tin peaches are, so they may well be coming with me again. So I'm finishing off now my tea, and it's 5:30. Ooh, let's put that down without spilling it. It's 5:30 and it's not dark yet, which just means spring's just around the corner. You know, we're in February, it's March in a couple of days, and it feels like spring's on its way, and I couldn't be happier, because although I camped through the winter, I'm not a fan of winter these days, and I'm looking forward to the warm days and the long days. And when you live this far north, come the summertime, we get pretty much daylight all day. It's excellent. The night is At midsummer, the night is about 2 hours long. It's fantastic, and I'm just really looking forward to the warm nights again. So in a minute, I'll try that again. In a minute, when I've had my tea, I'm going to light a fire. Now, that's not something I do very often when I'm camping, but here, somebody's had a fire already, and somebody's had a fire a few times by the looks of it, and there is a ring of stones, but also I'm on sand. This is a kind of dune system at the bottom of a cliff, and it's pretty much just sand. So I'm going to be careful, but I'm not using any other local wood apart from what was left by the fire by the previous person. I've actually bought in a bag of kindling, and I've made some feather sticks. So I'll drink my tea and then we'll light the fire. So that's the sun gone down and it's starting to get cold. So I've laid out a fire. I've graded my wood pile. I've made some feather sticks. And now the question is, how do I light it? Do I go along with Raymiers and use a fire bow, some friction? Do I go along with Bear Grylls and use a ferro rod? Or maybe I should use the SAS Survival Handbook method with potassium permanganate and sugar. No, I'm going to use a fire lighter and a lighter. Forget all that lot. There we go, job done. Now, I'm going to sit and listen to my Rebus book and warm up a bit in front of the fire. And I'll see you at bedtime. Well, it's time for bed, and that's been a very chilled out evening. Don't normally have a fire, but that was very nice. I've got some star pictures and just chilled out, looking at the fire and listening to the sea. Very nice, and I'm off to my pit. I've got to get up crack of dawn again, 6 o'clock alarm for, I've got to be in Aberdeen for 8 o'clock tomorrow morning, so I'm going to have to get up and get my skates on. I'm pretty much all packed up apart from the tent and my sleeping gear, so up early, no breakfast, just get packed and yomp on. Walking across the rocks over there and up those steps in the dark is going to be quite entertaining. I doubt I'll film it. I think I'm going to have to concentrate on not falling over. But so I shall say ta-ra. It's getting a bit chilly, I should have said. It's -1. So I'm having to wrap up a bit. But yeah, I'll see you in the morning. Well, good morning. That was a great night's sleep. It was a really calm night, and I just had the calming sound of the sea in the background, and I just chilled out and had a really good kip. Like, it's about, what is it? It's about 5 to 6. I better pack this tent up quickly and pick my way across the beach and up those steps and get myself back to the van. And I'll speak to you when I get back to the van. That's me back at the van. So I'll get home and I'll do a little wash up and I'll tell you a bit more about the tent and what my initial thoughts are, and I'll also give you the details of my new sleeping pad and I'll give you my initial thoughts on that. So I'll see you back at home. Well, that's me back home, and all in all a pretty fantastic trip. Wasn't really any low points. I would have liked to have stayed a bit longer and had my breakfast on the beach in the sunlight, but yeah, I had a pressing engagement, so I'd got to go. As far as the kit's concerned, the tent is called Blackthorn 2 by Highlander, and it's all right. It's got a few faults. It may be now I pitched it, but it seems like the outer tent is pretty close to the inner tent due to the back bagging and the sides bagging a little bit. Now, it may need pegging out a little bit more at the bottom, and I may have to add some peg out loops, or it may have just been down to how I pitched it. So I'll reserve judgment until I've tried it another time, and at least one more times. The sleeping pad, yeah, I'm pretty impressed. It's called, what's it called, leaning forward? It's called an Eco Outdoors High Burn Insulated, and it claims to be 4-season, and it seemed pretty good. Now, I was sleeping with this on top of a foam mat, but it was -1 or -2 overnight, and I was toasty warm. I felt no cold coming through it. So yet again, I will reserve judgment until I've used it a few more times, but first impressions seem pretty good. Now, I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, it would be of a great help if you gave me a thumbs up and left a comment. And if you're not already subscribed, if you could click the subscribe box, it helps me get seen on our YouTube, helps the algorithm find me and spread the word a little bit. So that would all help. Thank you very much. So until the next one, I'll say ta-ra. Ta-ra a bit.